Yeah. Good morning to all members of the media. Good morning to my colleagues. Good morning to those who are listening and viewing on social media, and a special good morning to those in the diaspora who are following us. This morning, let me first apologize for the late start, and that is due to some technical problems we had. We had our office flooded out recently, and so in trying to get things together, we are experiencing some difficulties, but we are set and ready to go right now. This morning I have with me, who will be making a presentation, the political leader and leader of the opposition, the Honorable Alan Chasney, and his deputy, Mr. Guy Joseph. Unfortunately, the news that we have for you today is not very good news, because we have many issues that are looming over St. Lucia and that are posing threats to the citizens of St. Lucia. We will deal with two of those issues this morning, one of which is the CIP program, and you will want to know a little more about what is happening and the threat that we are facing currently, and that will be presented to you by the political leader and leader of the opposition. And secondly, the unenviable, very disturbing, discomforting crime situation that we are facing will be dealt with by Mr. Guy Joseph, the Deputy Political Leader. But to start off, I will invite Honorable Alan Chasney, the Leader of the Opposition, to make a presentation on the CIP program.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the introduction, Mr. Montoute. This morning I want to take the opportunity to report on the CIP program. We received an announcement yesterday that the Prime Minister is attending a meeting in Brussels with the EU, specifically to discuss the CIP program. So let me read the statement that will be ensuing, and I'll give some further details and clarification to it. The Prime Minister's office yesterday issued a press release that the Prime Minister has gone to Brussels to meet with the European Union to discuss the Citizenship by Investment program. The opposition has been reliably informed that in fact Mr. Pierre was summoned due to serious concerns about the operation of this program. We, as a party, have been sounding the alarm bell for almost 2 years since government and the Prime Minister in particular changed the rules governing the Economic Fund to allow Cabinet to use the CIP monies freely, and due to their damning decision to continue accepting Russian and Iranian applications at the commencement of the Ukraine war, in spite of the international concerns. In addition, the government's refusal to commit to the OECS joint protocols and the recent addition of an infrastructural option have collectively undermined confidence in our program. This raises serious security and transparency concerns and threatens to impact our current visa-free access to the United Kingdom and Europe, which will necessarily include Martinique and Guadeloupe. There's also very real risk that the US and Canada could reverse their recently granted concessions to allow us to apply and renew our visas online. The government recently announced during the budget estimates that the donation option within the CIP program only achieved 50% of its projected revenue, and it was negatively affected by the real estate option. Whilst no further explanations was offered, it has been reported that the real estate option is being sold unlawfully at a discounted price, which the government has to date not denied or confirmed. The government has also launched a new option which will allow certain approved developers to undertake infrastructure projects for the government and to reimburse themselves by selling our citizenship for $100,000 US and receiving the funds directly. The government has to date not informed the people of St. Lucia about this new option, but there is already evidence that a particular developer has begun selling this option, and even more concerning is the subpar selling price of US $80,000. The OECS countries with CIP programs have recently agreed to a common standard as recommended by the European Union, including a minimum price of $200,000 US dollars. St. Lucia, under my administration, spearheaded this joint approach, which was critical for regional security and to avoid each island undermining the others. It is not only disappointing, but extremely alarming that the government seems incapable of understanding the far-reaching and implications of its refusal to join this initiative, using a pathetic excuse of a conflict with existing contractual commitments. The recommended and traditional practice that CIP applications are forwarded to the regional security institutions for independent vetting is now being disregarded. The consequent risk to the reputation of our program and to local and regional security are obvious to everyone but the Prime Minister and his cabinet. United Workers' Party is warning this government to stop their mismanagement and corrupt actions of the CIP program because the risk to our security and reputation are serious. Many St. Lucians have to struggle to get visas to travel for health, education, shopping, and visiting friends and family. The online process for the US and Canada has made things much easier, but this could now be at risk, as well as visa-free access to other countries that we currently enjoy. The fallout will likely result in further hardship to the St. Lucians by increasing the burden and cost of visa applications. It is time that the government stops the reckless decision-making by irresponsible people seemingly incapable of understanding or indifferent to the devastating consequences we as a people will face. Let me speak very specifically on some issues. It was always the intention and the objective while we were in office to have the CIP programs fall under one banner. In fact, it was our administration that had recommended even the vetting of applications should be done on a regional basis, so that there would be a common price, a common vetting program, and to do as much that we commonly could. In fact, we even had recommended at one point that the funds should go into the OECS, and some of the monies that we were collecting would be used to strengthen the OECS Secretariat, and monies divided amongst the different countries. Sadly, these recommendations fell on deaf ears. It's only until recently, when Dominica now has been sanctioned and have lost their visa-free access to several countries around the world, that now the countries are taking it seriously. And so, while the joint approach, in my opinion, doesn't go far enough, it's certainly a move in the right direction. And one of the critical things is on agreeing on a common price of $200,000. So one, a common approach towards security background checks, and a common approach towards the revenue that we're going to collect. That there should be an elimination of unlawful practices. There's a history in this region of some persons who have been given the approval to sell the real estate option, that what they have been doing is selling it underpriced. So creating a scheme where persons can buy their real estate option and be financed. So they give a down payment of about $120,000 and they're granted their citizenship. The countries either have been oblivious to what has been taking place or have deliberately ignored it. So the result is a person can get a real estate option that's supposed to be sold for $200,000, and are purchasing it for $120,000. It means you get your citizenship and a real estate option for a price of $120,000. So when the Prime Minister says that in the last budget cycle that our donation program, so the donation program is for $100,000, and that $100,000 goes directly to the state into the economic fund, that it underachieved what it was supposed to do by 50%. And he specifically said that it was the real estate option that undermined it. There have been reports that our real estate program has been selling the program for less than the market value, for the face value of what it's supposed to be doing. And that's why we've seen a shift. The government now has introduced, by the way of an SI, gazetted, that they have started an infrastructure program. The way that the infrastructure program would work, from what we understand, is that a company would be identified and they would agree to do infrastructure projects for the government. They would fund it, and that they would then reimburse themselves by selling the citizenship program, and that they would sell it for $100,000. And that $100,000, instead of going to CIP, would actually go directly to the company that was identified to do the infrastructure program. I have evidence on hand to show that that company is selling the program in the market right now for $80,000. So we think that this is going to actually erode the donation program with the government even more, but certainly brings up significant questions as to whether in fact that this can be done lawfully. Why do I bring this point up? There currently is a lawsuit by a company against the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, where they were participating in a citizenship by investment program, and the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, it is alleged that they were allowing a similar program to occur, meaning that a person who could sell the program was underselling the program in the marketplace. And the question again was risen, did they knowingly do that, or were they naive, or did they pretend they didn't know? So this company is suing the government for fraud. It has also raised the question legally, if somebody obtains a citizenship program in an unlawful program, have they genuinely obtained citizenship? I don't have the answer to that question, but it's an appropriate question to answer. So let me be very clear. If in fact the program that you obtained your citizenship under, that the legal price is $200,000, and you obtain it for $120,000, have you obtained legal citizenship? That's a very important question that's going to have to be answered. The government not only has launched this infrastructural program, but they have told the public nothing. I'm sure the media have never been to a press briefing to hear the details of the infrastructure program. And then again, this is another form of betrayal by this government, that they believe that they can just do things by themselves and explain it afterwards. This is unacceptable behavior by our government, who is supposed to be representing the people. And if the transparency is not available here, I assure you the transparency is also not available internationally. And the persons who depend on the standards being maintained from a security perspective of our programs clearly are going to be very concerned. I want to speak specifically now about visa access. We've worked very hard to build up the trust and confidence of our Western partners, particularly the United Kingdom, Europe, which includes Martinique and Guadeloupe, United States and Canada. We've made significant inroads in obtaining visa-free access to the UK and to Europe. We've recently heard the announcement of Canada that we can now apply online to get a visa waiver instead of having to fly to Trinidad, instead of putting out long forms which cost money. With the United States, if you already have a visa, the renewal of that visa can be done online, saving a significant amount of money and time. Having to fly to Barbados, overnight in Barbados, FedEx back your passport once you've gotten it. All of these benefits are in jeopardy if we continue to mismanage our CIP program. The mismanagement of the CIP program will raise significant concerns about security. This is particularly important when we've understood that the process of sending all of the applications to the RSS and impacts has not been happening. Is that a deliberate policy decision? Is that mismanagement? The result of both of them will undermine the reputation and the confidence that those countries who give us visa-free access will have in our countries. The United Workers' Party, and particularly the leader of the opposition's office, does not want to come out and simply highlight these issues. We have continuously warned the government over the last 2 years of the mismanagement and the mismanagement of the CIP program and the deterioration in people's confidence as to how our program is being managed and the impact it will have on security. And therefore means that St. Lucia becomes a higher risk destination for those countries. It is my intention as a leader of the opposition to write individually to civil society, to have a meeting with civil society to discuss this CIP program along with the situation of the National Lottery Association as it pertains to bypassing the Finance Act, to also discuss with them what is taking place with the GPH deal, what has taken place and what's transpired with the Banan's land situation, and very importantly, what Mr. Joseph will speak of afterwards, and probably the singular most important issue, is on crime. The intention of meeting with them individually is to ultimately agree that we will have a common meeting, a meeting of like minds, a coalition, if you call it, that we can meet with government. Our individual voices are not being heard. Crime is out of control. The government has been anything but sincere and have been deliberately, I believe, misguiding, misrepresenting the facts. And the consequence to all of us is serious at this point. But I think the responsible thing to do is to meet, agree on some of those issues, and cause a meeting to take place, either with the government, preferably, or without. And if we have it without, it's simply to come up with recommendations that we can send to the government. So at this point, I'd like to ask the media if they have any questions as it pertains to the CIP program.
I think for the better flow, we should allow...
No, I would like to bring the CIP to an end because the crime thing is very serious, and I want to allow a clear focus on that issue. So.
Agree to one of the clauses in that MOA because of the commitments, the legal commitments that we already made. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that that's just an excuse. The condition that he's speaking of is a condition of the $200,000. And that's a very easy thing to resolve. What is more important? Isn't it our reputation? Isn't it the security? The EU have insisted that there be a minimum price. It's a simple thing to resolve. You just say, as of such and such date, the price is going to change to $200,000. Anything that's given before, we'll accept the $100,000, we'll process it at $100,000. But moving forward, it's going to be $200,000. You see, this is not just an issue of sovereignty, because people, by getting a citizenship of St. Lucia, are benefiting from the OACS and CARICOM treaties, and are also benefiting from visa-free access into those countries. That's a condition. And if those entities have indicated they believe that they should not be selling it for less than that, then that's the new standard to maintain those benefits. And it's shameful. Remember, they made the same excuse when it came to Russia and Iran. And eventually they had to acquiesce and agree to the regional standard. So I think that that is a feeble excuse. It's irresponsible excuse. And certainly if they maintain that posture, I only fear the worst for us in St. Lucia.
One question, as the opposition, and what are your thoughts on this whole CIP program? We've seen issues from the onset. Okay, it was established by this current administration, the SLP, continued under your administration. Changes were made under your administration, and recent changes have also been made. Always not been made public, but recent changes have been made. We've heard so many things coming out of the different countries, the US, the UK, the EU, the issues with this program. Do you think this is a program we should just scrap altogether?
I want to say that when we came into office, the program as it was structured was incomplete. So let's take the economic fund as an example. It only established an economic fund, but there are actually no regulations governing the fund. And it took us some time to figure out how to make that happen, and after a lot of consultation. The price structure that the government wanted to implement was not feasible, because you can't be out selling a passport regime for $250,000, and countries like Dominica and other countries were selling it for $100,000. You weren't going to sell. So at that point, we had to make a decision. Do we get out of this, or do we stay in? So what we did is we matched the prices in the marketplace legally, and we continued to try to work with the other 4 CIP countries on agreeing on raising the prices. But what St. Lucia is being accused of right now was taking place in other countries. In fact, in 2 other countries, because it was competition to the bottom. That's what everything was being driven to the bottom. So your question as to whether this program should continue is very important. If in fact there can be a coalition, and we can agree on common standards, and that we can give it the assurance that there is an independent evaluation of the security, I think that that would go a long ways in comforting the Americans, the Canadians, UK and Europeans and everyone else around the world. And I think that the monies can be used to a very positive purpose. When we created the economic fund, the money was supposed to be used either for capital projects or for reducing government's debt. This government came in, and within the first 2 weeks, you'll remember, amended it to allow any project that is approved by cabinet. We saw in this budget that more than half of the money that was collected in the economic fund was used for recurrent expenditure. I want everybody to understand that. The revenue that government declared and celebrating this surplus, almost half of that surplus came from CIP. The remaining amount of money that came for the surplus budget came from tax gouging, maintaining a higher excise tax on gas, reducing the subsidy that they had on cooking gas and on other items in St. Lucia. So the surplus is not really a surplus. But on this CIP issue, I agree with you. If in fact that we cannot find a formula that's transparent and that is working in the best interest of everyone, then as a party, we're going to have to sit down and determine what our policy will be on the CIP program. And I assure all St. Lucians that we will arrive at a position before elections.
I think we have elders rearing to go in the back.
So, we are still on the subject of the collective agreement by all CIP countries. What are the benefits of signing on to this treaty, and what added benefits? You mentioned having CIP applicants being vetted by all 4 countries, despite what country they want to buy into. What kind of benefits can St. Lucia and the other countries, the other CIP countries, garner from having something like that?
So the benefit of signing on to the OECD treaty is common standards and practices and transparency. So what you want to know is that everyone is vetting all applicants the same way, and that there's an independent entity that can provide the veracity that's taking place. The veracity meaning can independently confirm that everybody is going through a vetting process equally. If somebody wants to appeal, that there should be an appeals court, if you like, for the OECS. Because remember, we have freedom of movement within the OECS. And that was the issue that when we first came in and decided to support the CIP program, because if you already have St. Kitts, Dominica, Antigua, and Grenada in the program, then you're in it. Because all those persons who become citizens of those countries benefit from the freedom of movement within the OECS level. So in that case, there should be a common standard among the OECS countries, including the price. What differentiates the countries from each other could be the real estate option. But the question becomes, if in fact that the benefits are common, should there be then the money pooled all together and divided in some way among the countries, whether it's the population size of the country, etc. But you have countries that are already been very successful and understandably did not want to share. But now I believe all of the programs are in jeopardy, because if in fact they lose the visa-free access into these countries, they will have no program. But sadly, our citizens will also lose out, because it means that they had visa-free access before. They could get and apply for visas online. Now they're going to be penalized because the reputation of our countries would have been destroyed. The countries trust in us that our citizens are safe, because we have to see our border as their border. If in fact we cannot satisfy that and we cannot get the visa-free access, we will not have a citizenship program to begin with. So we've come too far at this point. I personally believe that the CIP program should be an OECS CIP program, and it should be managed independently. And I also personally believe that some of the monies from the CIP program should go towards strengthening the OECS Secretariat. Because again, the cost of government is too high. Should we have independent foreign offices? Should we go to Ottawa? I see we're going back to Ottawa. I thought when we went back to Ottawa, we would have gone back as the OECS. So we would share in the office space, we would share in the administration, but if each individual country now wants to put someone there, that's great. The same thing at the UN. We're at the UN, we're understaffed. Think of how many resolutions are coming to our consideration. Do we have the capacity to really do the necessary analysis of all those things? In fact, at the UN, to me, it should not even be an OECS desk, it should be a CARICOM desk. The same thing over in Europe, at the EU. These are very important outlets. And so the CIP program can show a way of deeper integration. And I can say to you, I think that the UK and the US and Europe would welcome that. Whatever concerns that they have about the citizenship program, I think would be mitigated by the fact that they could see that this is strengthening not only the individual islands, but strengthening the regional growth within our thing. And it's being done in a fair and transparent word. That's the word, transparency. You cannot have and say the program is being sold for 200,000, that there are reports that are being sold for 120, and you don't investigate the matter. Now, when you say in your own budget, it's not my words. Prime Minister said in his own budget estimates that his donation program was bastardized, was reduced, was affected by the success of the real estate program. That's his own word. So what are you going to do about it? Why did that happen? No explanation. And I know that there are people who have written to the Prime Minister and to the Minister of Investment, clearly indicating what is taking place in the marketplace, clearly indicating the impact it's having, and more importantly, clearly indicating if in fact it continues, what is going to be the fallout of this practice.
The Schengen visa-free access. This is something that you have spoken about. I have interviewed you on that matter, and we spoke at length about it. Currently, St. Lucia's passport allows visa-free access to 165 countries, including the entire Schengen area in Europe. Now, if we lose, in fact, before I say that, what do you think will come out of this meeting in Brussels? Or what are your expectations? How do you think, how badly do you think we can be affected? And what are you hoping is going to happen?
So the Europeans have continuously made it very clear that security has become one of the top priorities for their countries from a government perspective. And certainly if you follow the media in those countries, it has become a critical issue nationally. I mean, in the United States of America, the wall has become now jointly supported by the Democrats and the Republicans, which is security. For the Europeans, it's the same thing. So when Ukraine went to war with Russia, they made it very clear about the sanctions they were putting on Russia and Iran. So when now your country, St. Lucia, was ignoring that warning and allowing Russians and Iranians to apply for citizenship in St. Lucia, with the understanding by getting their citizenship, they could now get visa-free access into Europe. It's a loophole. I think anybody with any level of common sense would understand the threat. So the Europeans clearly will not allow that to happen. And I'm disappointed it took this government that long to understand a simple concept like that and recognize how our citizenship program benefits from that visa-free access, how St. Lucians benefit from that access, and that they have played Russian roulette with that. The Europeans have now made it very clear, and they've shown that their threats are not weak. We know that there is one country in the OACS that has already lost visa access. Ireland just recently pulled the visa access for Dominica. The UK put sanctions on Dominica. And so Dominicans now have been penalized as citizens. And more importantly, it's impacted the viability of their own citizenship by investment program. So that's why I think that Dominica has quickly gone and agreed to this new program, because it's going to be all or nothing at this point. The results of the meeting, I think, is one of two things. Either the Europeans have already made up their mind and are going to let the leaders know that they're going to be changing and amending the visa access. The first one would be that people are going to have to apply online to get a visa. So it's no longer that you just show up. The purpose of applying online, I believe, is to screen out your citizenship by investment program. Anybody who's applying online, who has a St. passport and comes from and was born in a country of concern, they're going to force those persons to go and get a proper visa. So it means they would have to go to an office, be fingerprinted, interviewed before they're allowed to go. That will start off initially with persons born outside of St. Lucia, in countries that don't come from it. It could then start including all St. Lucians, because that's what they're going to be given. And by applying online, right, what they're saying to you, they have the privilege of saying no. Versus right now, because of the way the Schengen visa works, you can just travel. Once you have a passport from St. Lucia, there's no application. You automatically are entered in. The second thing that can happen at that meeting is that they can give them a stern warning and indicate that one of the conditions is that they sign on to this treaty and they find a way to make sure that this treaty is enforced. And they may give them a period of time. I hope that it's the latter and that the Europeans have not made up their mind already and are going to implement a visa waiver application, because that's the first step.
Sounds like solutions born in the diaspora. Solutions born of people born of Solution parentage in a different country, maybe diplomats or people traveling, maybe somebody who's gone off to study and migrated to another country and they're born there but their parents are Solution. These people are inherently Solution. But it sounds like they are going to be the ones losing out first if this comes to that.
I think we all lose out. Because when you go from no application to an application for a waiver, you're allowing, and what you're accepting is that country is going to make the decision on an individual basis. What the criteria that countries are going to use is my guess. But I would say to you, if CIP is of concern, anybody who has citizenship from St. Lucia, who was born in countries of which they deem to be of high risk, I think that they're going to cause those persons to go through a more thorough vetting before they're given permission to fly in. So that would be the first step. So as I said to you, I think the outcome of this meeting will be either the Europeans are going to indicate to them there's going to be a new process for how you're going to access the Schengen visa, or they're going to tell them they're going to be taking away the Schengen visa in its entirety, and that people will have to apply for visas to come.
How do you think this situation can be rectified and Solution to safeguard our citizens and the people investing in our CIP program?
So this government must stop thinking that people are naive, must stop thinking that they can keep fooling people. So for a Deputy Prime Minister to say to you that they cannot proceed to agree to the conditions of the OACS because they have a contract is a lie. It is a betrayal. And it is ignoring what is at risk. And so I believe the only way that the CIP program can maintain its presence and satisfy the security risk that the countries have is by it becoming an OACS program. And I think even when you look at a country like St. Vincent, St. Vincent keeps arguing that it's not part of the program. And I know the Prime Minister and I have had that discussion. He is. How in the existing treaty does he believe that he's going to stop a St. Lucian who may have had a citizenship by investment program passport from coming to invest in St. Vincent? We had the same problem in St. Lucia. When we were not part of the CIP program, a lot of persons particularly Chinese, came to St. Lucia by way of a passport from Dominica. And there was nothing legally we could do to stop that from happening. That's part of the treaty. So I think that St. Vincent may be happier knowing that they can sit at the table and establish what those standards are going to be, and if in fact that there's going to be a sharing of revenue. And I think that that's what needs to take place. We need to share the revenue. But the security risk, the lack of transparency, the inconsistency of the individual programs are now jeopardizing our reputations and the other countries' willingness to do business with us.
I think we'll stop here with the questions. And since we have another segment where the political leader, the guy Joseph, will be speaking on the issue of
Good day to everyone. This is indeed a very touchy subject, the subject of crime. And while many in our society continue to say whenever the issue of crime comes about, we should not politicize crime, I don't know how we can deal with the crime situation and not bring the politicians who are responsible for the affairs of the country into play. And so while we as opposition will speak to this matter, this is not a matter of politics. This is a matter of national interest. We have seen and we have heard enough over the last couple of years to indicate to us in St. Lucia the incapability of this government in handling the crime situation in St. Lucia. And I will highlight a few areas of concern. When we inherited government in 2016, we found a situation where none of the Coast Guard boats were working. What we had done prior between 2006-2011 with the various radar systems, that was not functioning in 2016. It was functioning prior to 2011. We also saw a number of situations. The forensic lab was closed. There was nothing happening there. The training that was required. In fact, the building needed repairs that was not even done by the government. We saw a situation where the Venezuelans did not need a visa to come to St. Lucia. When we came into government in 2016, we addressed all of these concerns, including making sure that all the Coast Guard boats were up and running. We had a situation with the DPP office being understaffed and lacking resources. Remember, we had the Leahy law imposed on St. Lucia, and our police officers were not getting any training from the Americans. We were barred from taking part in any of the training programs in law enforcement, in crime prevention, and all of the other issues that confront us with crime. It appears to me that the gains made between 2016 and 2021, we have lost again under this Labour Party in less than 3 years in office, just under 3 years. And let us examine the discussions. We have heard the PR from the Labour Party saying that they needed information or statistics on the K9 unit, And we found that when the Labour Party came into office, one of the first things they did was to disband the K9 unit, indicating that it was too costly to operate a K9 unit in St. Lucia. Now let us examine the facts. A K9 unit which cost the country $40,000 a month. That is $480,000 a year. And the Prime Minister on several occasions have been indicating that he has given the requisite resources to the police force and highlighting the number of vehicles, motorcycles. Well, I would assume the motorcycles would still fall under the vehicles. So the transportation and the other equipment that is required. So are we to conclude that in the Prime Minister's estimation that the K9 unit was not a necessary tool for the police force in fighting crime? Now, vehicles are generally used to respond after a crime has been committed. On rare occasions, a vehicle would be used to prevent a crime. But the K9 unit was heavily involved in detecting illegal firearms, drugs, and other things that could lead to major crimes in this country. And for $480,000 a year, the Prime Minister felt that was too much money to spend on fighting crime. And I can give you 2 Hilux pickups from Beachcomber, which can be crashed 2 days after you buy them, would cost you what the K9 unit would cost for a whole year. And the returns from the K9 unit was evident that it more than paid for itself. Not that we are putting a value to crime, but if the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, who also happens to be the Minister for National Security, would see it fit to disband a unit like this, then we have cause for concerns. Now we talk about major crime, and homicides come into play. We are 26 or 27. Are we sure? Are we sure what the numbers really are as we speak today? So I know yesterday it was 26, so and if there was one this morning, it is 2. We are 28. And while I heard on Newsspin that 4 months, it is not 4 months. Today is just the 9th of April. So we have 3 months and 9 days. And we already are 28 murders in this country. Now, this is a crisis situation. And we are not here gloating over this situation. UWP can win the election even if the government has crime under 100% control. This is not something to rejoice about. The situation that exists in St. Lucia is a very scary one for every right-thinking St. Lucia. That we can see that level of criminal activity within our borders. And it's the nature of the crimes that we are seeing that is being committed in this country. So we have a serious crisis situation on our hands. And the response we have seen from the government is the appointment of 3 different ministers to try and bring the situation under control. So you have a Minister of National Security, you have a Minister of Crime Prevention, and you have the other Minister of Home Affairs. Plus, you have an Attorney General. So if I were to add up all of these persons, 4 people together, and I can boldly say that we are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for their salary. And let me just break it down so that every average St. Lucian can understand. The appointment of a Minister of Crime Prevention, and I said it in a previous interview, I think that is an injustice being done to the member for Micoud South. Micoud North, yes. For being given the title of Minister of Crime Prevention. I don't know what that means. I don't know that the average St. Lucian understands what that means, that a minister's title is Crime Prevention Minister. But since he became minister, we have seen the results. We have seen the escalation. So, am I to conclude that the minister is failing at his job because crime is increasing? Now, we are talking about major crimes. We've not even gone into the areas of rape, the areas of robberies, armed robberies. You know, we've not gone into predial larceny. We've not gone into the area of the fraudulent license that are appearing by hundreds among the drivers in this country. Because are not all these crimes? So what is it that we can expect from a Minister of Crime Prevention? So if you take the minister's salary, his permanent secretary, because all ministers and ministries will have a permanent secretary, an office from which to operate, and one secretary would cost more than a K9 unit. And it was quite embarrassing listening to the Prime Minister interview, during his interview, indicating that the French had given them a dog. And he laughed as if that was a joke, as if it was something comical. Now, I don't know how something as important as the recommencement of a K9 unit, where a country has gone out of its way to assist in making a donation to St. Lucia, and that the Prime Minister, I don't know what his laughter meant, but I would take it to mean that he felt giving him a dog was a joke. So why did you go and receive it in the first instance? You know, now a lot of people in St. Lucia have been asking, has this dog been trained? And if it was trained as a French dog, will it understand English commands? These are legitimate questions that we need to get some of these restrictions lifted, and that at least some of our police officers could get the training that is required. We are seeing the behavior of the government as indicated by the leader of the opposition and member for Micoud South, indicating that the decisions pertaining to the CIP can have major implications for St. Lucia and for future security collaboration with countries that are like-minded. And so we have a lot of reasons to be concerned. So as we move forward to address these concerns, we need to realize that this government cannot manage the crime situation. We have heard what has happened in relation to licensed firearms. Who now issues licensed firearms in this country? Because the word on the street is that some people with questionable records are now holders of legal licensed firearms in this country. And then we see the escalation of the unlicensed firearms in this country. We saw a statement by a minister of government about somebody going to Deglo, whether it was to be dumped or whatever, because it's garbage they dumped at Deglo. But a couple days later, 2 bodies were found at Deglo. Is there a correlation? Is there something that somebody knew? You see, we as leaders in this country, we have a responsibility to be mindful about our words, our utterances. The Prime Minister said that he knows everything that is happening behind the scenes. He knows who is behind the crime situation. So have the police questioned the Prime Minister about the 2 bodies that appeared at Deglo? And when we ask these questions, people want to say that we are being political and we are politicizing crime. No. When Alan Shasney, leader of the opposition now, was in charge of government and the COVID situation existed, members of the Labour Party in opposition stood in the parliament and was holding the government responsible for the people who had died with COVID. Today the shoe is on the other foot, and when we ask the legitimate questions, people take offense to it. I have every reason to be concerned. Every right-thinking St. Lucian has a right to be concerned. The media has a right to be concerned. We have heard the government say on several occasions that crime should not be reported as crime is happening. Why? Why is it that way? Now, who do we turn to? When your government is failing you in handling with 3 ministers plus an attorney general, and we have seen no improvement in national security. The highest ranking officer in the government, the Prime Minister, is the Minister for National Security. And on several occasions we have asked the Prime Minister to relieve himself of this responsibility and give it to somebody who has the time and the energy to attend to these matters. But no, I don't see it as a demotion to the Prime Minister if he was to take away the portfolio from himself. I see it as doing something sensible and better for the country, because he has other things to occupy himself and his time. So appointing a minister for crime prevention is not a solution to the problem, because I am certain that there is an overlapping of responsibilities when you have so many people. You know what they say? Too many cooks spoil the soup. So this one is expecting that this is the responsibility of another person, because you have national security, you have crime prevention, you have home affairs, you have the Attorney General's office. I mean, we know that things are chaotic in St. Lucia, but at least we can expect some semblance of order with the government and the cabinet. And we are not seeing that. So we have to make a call to the churches, the unions, the chamber, the Bar Association, the NYC. We have to call on all other civil society groups. We cannot become immune to this level of criminal activity. We cannot become numb to it that, well, it's another murder. I mean, the gruesome pictures that appear on our telephones, I know some of the media houses cannot even show some of the pictures. And I have to applaud those who posted some of the photos on social media and at least covered the worst parts of those photos. I mean, can you imagine a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old in primary school who has access to social media? This is a daily occurrence in St. Lucia today. This is not a movie we are watching. This is not Rambo we are watching. This is the reality of life in St. Lucia. And I am saying that if the government is not going to do anything about it, as they have shown that they are incapable, or at least their moves have not paid dividends. We gave them suggestions, and they have an affinity with Dayglow. They said they put it in the garbage. The suggestions made by this United Workers' Party. And we have a right, as citizens of this country, to demand better from our government. The crime situation, it's not getting any better. And if we believe that waiting on the government is going to solve the problem, for almost 3 years, we have seen it is not working. So, we continue to see the escalation in crime. The number of ministers has not had a positive impact on crime reduction. A minister for crime prevention, maybe we can call him the minister of crime escalation, not the minister of crime prevention. And I appeal to the government to reconsider what they have done to the young man by changing the title of the ministry. But they have not done so, so we have to respond appropriately. This is our St. Lucia. This is our country. We are seeing the restrictions that all other countries are imposing. I don't want to have to run and hide in America or England or Canada. This is our homeland, and we need to help the government take charge of the situation. We have offered, and as indicated by the political leader and leader of the opposition, we want to meet with civil society. We believe that there should be community meetings. We believe that there should be church meetings. We believe that there should be the sports clubs, the mothers groups, the fathers groups, if they still exist, the teachers unions, everybody. We have seen an escalation in criminal activity even at our schools. Where is the gentleman who was supposed to be in charge of giving direction to school security? So with all of this that we have highlighted, we are not gloating over the crime situation. We are saying that we need to put our shoulders to the wheel. Obviously, the government said they do not want to engage us. They do not want our ideas. But we cannot sit by and allow St. Lucia to go down the drain because we have an incompetent government. So my appeal to all listening, right-thinking St. Lucians, let us do our part. Let us meet. Let us come up with ideas and solutions. We have some ideas we have been sharing, but they are falling on deaf ears. So I appeal to everyone, let us not pretend that what is happening is not happening. It is real, and we are en route to becoming what Haiti is, and we cannot afford to allow that to happen to our sweet St. Lucia. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Deputy Political Leader Guy Joseph on the issue of crime? Okay. Okay, so we've heard from our political leader on the CIP crisis. We've heard from Guy Joseph on the crime crisis. Our country is in trouble, our country is in crisis, but we as an opposition will not sit idly by and allow our country to deteriorate in this manner. You'll be hearing more from us during the course of this week, especially on the subject of crime. We'll be on the various talk shows. You will hear Meet the Opposition on a round table. We'll be further elaborating on the subject. We also want to engage civil society, and we are calling on all St. Lucians, including civil society organizations, to come forward. In light of the fact that very little to nothing is being done by government, it is our country. We have a responsibility to step up and to see what it is that we can do. First of all, to jolt the government into appropriate action, and to let it be known that this is not a failed state that will be run over by criminals, and that we as a law-abiding citizens would be at the mercy of criminals. So I want to thank all of you today. I want to thank those who are viewing on social media. I want to thank those in the diaspora who are following, and I want to thank my colleagues, Political Leader Honorable Alan Chasney, Deputy Political Leader Guy Joseph, and my other colleagues who are present. I want to express special thanks to you, the media. I know you are very stretched these days, having to cover a homicide every 5 minutes, it appears. And let us not forget that in the last week, we have had at least 6 homicides. While a bloodbath continues, the government showers itself in praise. Thank you very much.